I haven't made very much project progress on the intellectual work because, admittedly, I haven't really been thinking about this game too much since the last recording. Essentially, what I'm thinking is I'm a little bit puzzled because sort of like the case numbering isn't lined up with how I think the plot would go. So, we're noticing that the prosecutor is now in the dock, or standing as the defendant. And this has happened before, I believe, in two mainline Ace Attorney games. In the first one, and I believe Dual Destinies, this happens. I have not watched footage of of most of Dual Destinies nor played it, but I do know I believe that the prosecutor is the defendant in the final case of Dual Destinies. I don't know anything else about the final case of Dual Destinies, like what the situation was, who was the victim, who prosecutes it. I don't know any of that stuff, or basically anything about it other than the prosecutor is the defendant. That's like the only detail I know about the last case of Dual Destinies. But both of those instances have been in the last case. Whereas this is the fourth case of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicle, or the Great Ace Attorney 2. I guess it's not the Chronicles this time, it's the Great Ace Attorney Resolve, or whatever it's called. So this is being done one case early. You might go, okay, fine. Now, there's also something that you encounter in Ace Attorney called a boss prosecutor, which I've mentioned a couple times. And that is when you have a special prosecutor come in for the last case. It's a little bit like more nasty than the previous cases. This happened in the first game. It also happened in the sixth game, which is called Spirit of Justice. And they may not necessarily be harder to argue against. They just have a nastier personality. In the first game, that boss prosecutor actually prosecutes the prosecutor from the previous cases. And in both instances where there's a boss prosecutor, the prosecutor ends up being the perpetrator. This is kind of spoilers for these games, but I have to explain this, otherwise you don't know what I'm thinking. It's better, you need to know what I'm thinking when I'm doing a Let's Play. It's the whole point of a Let's Play. And this has also happened with a non-boss prosecutor as well, but happens with the boss prosecutor. So, why do I bring this up? Well, Lord Strongheart, it's been mentioned that Lord Strongheart used to be a prosecutor, and mentioned that to be the case by Lord Van Zykes. And he was the person, because why that was relevant is he was the person who was going to prosecute the professor, but Van Zykes begged him to be the prosecutor instead. Now that we know that Lord Strongheart was once a prosecutor, that sets up the pieces, that sets up the foundation we need to introduce him as a boss prosecutor. And the boss prosecutor, by precedent of Ace Attorney, would prosecute the prosecutor. But the person prosecuting the prosecutor is not Lord Strongheart, it's Kazuma. And the prosecutor is being prosecuted too early. Right? The boss prosecutor usually doesn't show up until case 5. So basically, we have this kind of the timeline's all shifted, right? Where we have the prosecutor being prosecuted in case 4, but the prosecutor's not the boss prosecutor yet. He's going to appear in case 5. So it's either we prosecute Van Zykes gets off, he's innocent, but he doesn't return to prosecuting, he just kind of runs away, and the boss prosecutor prosecutes somebody else. Or, presuming that, what's-his-face, Male Strongheart's a boss prosecutor, or Male Strongheart actually takes over as the prosecutor, in this case, midway through, and all that stuff happens in this case, and the 5th case does something different and appendicable. I'm trying to make an adjective out of the word appendix. I don't know. It's very appendixy in some way. The 5th case is kind of appendix-like. So yeah, I don't know how this structure and how it's gonna work. It's doing things earlier than I anticipated, and this structure is kind of confusing me. Like I don't really follow how it's gonna be all structured. I'm presuming that in order to show who did it in the final case, we're gonna have to show that Kazuma's father wasn't actually the murderer. He wasn't actually the professor, and he was actually falsely prosecuted. We're also gonna find out that this guy, Mr. Vigil, he stepped down because he tried to let the professor escape because he thought he knew that the professor really wasn't the one who did it. Right? That's why he did that. And the execution was botched intentionally because they knew the professor really wasn't the one who did it. And the coroner said he was dead when he really wasn't because everyone knew that he didn't really do it. And it still raises the question that remains unanswered. Who shot him when he came up out of that grave? And it could have been Van Zyke, or it could have been Strongheart. Perhaps. Another compelling argument to say that maybe Male Strongheart, like why you'd expect him to be the prosecutor here instead of Kazuma, is that he has motivation to frame up Van Zyke's for a crime because he just hates Van Zyke's. Because Van Zyke's helped uncover the whole professor debacle, and Mr. Strongheart may not want that uncovered because he might be behind that whole thing. He might be the one who shot he wanted to prosecute the professor. He might have been the guy who shot him when he came out of the grave. So he might be upset with Van Zyke and he's trying to do this payback thing. He might also be upset with Gregson. And he's also going to be upset with Ryanosuke. But I don't know how that's going to come down on Ryanosuke yet. So one of the theories that I have about what's going on here is that Strongheart is intentionally framing up Van Zyke for the murder of Gregson. So then you would think, okay, who is the person who actually did it? Well, the person who did the framing, which would have been Strongheart. Which means that he has to show up in the trial somehow so we can accuse him. What would he show up as? Well, whatever his role is, which is prosecutor. Right, it all fits. The only problem is it's on the fourth case instead of the fifth one. Actually, going on to the case, which I'm not going to do very much of because I don't have very much time tonight, but do some of it. And hopefully not mess everything up on the first cross-examination like I usually do. There's that old familiar feeling again. The crushing pressure of this historic courthouse. Actually, no. It's a little different today. There's an even more menacing tension in the air. There is a menacing tension in the air here today, isn't there, I suppose? Yes, I think so. It can only be the result of the menacing appearance of the defendant. No, not really. A little more courtesy, if you please. Oh my, I do apologize. Wait, did you... I thought Naruhodo was the one who said that. Yeah, that was Ryanosuke. Okay. However, you're certainly not mistaken that this trial is far from ordinary. What do you mean? I am not privy to details, however, I understand that no jury has been selected. A trial without a jury, well, that's just like Japan, a trial of the professor 10 years ago. A closed court. Right, because it's a frame-up. Good, yep, there's a reason. Good morning, my dear fellows. Mr. Sholmes, and just by happen chance, the judge is never, in on it. So, the judge is always, perfect goody two-shoes. Sometimes he's not very smart, but he never does. He's always like perfectly moral, which is always very plot convenient. Mr. Sholmes, have you made note of my hair, Mr. Naruhodo? An outright victory for science, I must agree. To be perfectly honest, so much happened yesterday that, well, I completely forgot about your little hair problem. Huh. What to one man is a little hair problem? It's another day of drinking dubious potions after dubious potion. You have no idea how my stomach ails me this morning. Oh dear, how awful for you. I'm afraid you only have yourself to blame, Mr. Sholmes. Good morning to you, Mr. Reaper. I'm delighted to see you looking so full of vim. And I see London celebrating great detectives as active as ever. Yes, it appears both of these guys are on Team Vim. Oh, you exaggerate, my dear fellow. Compared with my paltry engagements with a few trivial cases. The Reaper's overbearing presence is far greater deterrent to the black roots of crime in our capital. And whilst I may not agree with your methods, there is at least one point on which I could readily commend you. What an honor, and that would be your eye for a good lawyer, sir. Mr. Sholmes. It's kind of not a compliment to Van Zyke. Anyway, after all, behind this lawyer there's a very great mind. My own. What are you trying to say? I wish only to say that you should be prepared for quite a trial, Mr. Reaper. Sorry to barge in. Why are these two paired up? Gina? What's that on her arm? It's a mourning band, I suppose. Father? Shouldn't you be at the symposium? It's been postponed, so I have some free time. Conveniently. I decided to come along with the police inspector to see our country's up-and-coming student in action. This is putting way more pressure on you than the trial itself. Like, if you thought the consequence of Van Zyke's being executed, the consequence of you losing your perfect streak as a lawyer and your reputation, the, like, standing your, yeah, like that whole public, in front of everybody, can you make arguments on the spot thing. Now, the father of your female friend is watching. And he's a great person, like a high-ranking politician in your country, essentially. I shall be very interested to see the fruits of your studies over the past year. Well, it's an honor to have you here. Let's hope there are some fruits to see. Odo. Yes, Gina? Why'd you agree to this, eh? Why'd you take him on? Experience. This Reaper bloke. Everyone says it was him what killed the boss. Sorry, Gina, but I just don't believe that. Well, if it weren't him, who was it? Well, you see, we never know going into it. And we have to, like, stumble upon it somehow. I don't know that yet. I don't care who calls him what. The Reaper's just a name. And just a person at the end of the day. And if it turns out it was him what killed the boss, then God help him. Fiery eyes indeed. Yes, the culprit deserves every ounce of your loathing. At least that may be some solace to the deceased. Please, Odo. Get whoever did this. For the boss. Oh, Gina. I ain't feeling this useless, but there's nothing I can do. So you've got to find who done this and make the wretch pay. Counsel for the defense and the defendant. Court will be in session shortly. Make your way into the courtroom at once, please. Alright then, here we go. It's time, Mr. Naruhodo. Lord Van Zykes. The good thing about this is there's not going to be any, what are those things? Summation examinations, which might help accelerate the pace of the trial, because those things tend to stall it out, and this kind of, stall things out. And as such, I don't really like them. One who lost his treasured brother to a mass murderer. One who lost his treasured father in a foreign court of law. One who lost the man who helped her escape destitution. And that misfortune, all that pain, on a course to collide headlong in this trial. Get smashed between all of it. It's time to shine a light on all these dark events. And whatever truth is revealed, we're going to have to look it straight in the eye. Are they just saying that Sholmes did it? Doesn't he have, like, some sort of weird alibi of some, like, he was at some hair thing at some point? Whatever. Hopefully this is just metaphorical. Hopefully Sherlock Holmes, or Sherlock Sholmes, or whatever his name is just metaphorical for looking truth straight in the eye. It's not the person who actually did it. Okay, I guess I presume I gotta take a guess at who is of my people in here is more likely to be the person who did it. Susato. That would be crazy. That would be like Maya actually being the person who did it. Maya actually being guilty. Imagine that. Okay. Mr. Sholmes. Well, aside from that very last bit I just saw... No. No. He's here for a different reason. Why is he in my people list? What role is this guy gonna play? Huh. He's here for a reason. They need to stick the character in here for... just to stick the character in here, right? Very interesting one. They essentially tell the character she didn't do it. I would think, I would think it was him. He would be my first choice, besides the complication that this is only the 4th trial, and he would only really, I can only imagine him being the culprit on the 5th trial. No. No. Possibly. This is another good choice. No. Yeah, so... the best choices are Strongheart, Daily Vigil, although it would be kind of weird, and the really strange one, Sherlock Sholmes. And if you had to make a 4th choice, it would be Saishiro, because what else is he doing? Why else is he doing here? What is he doing here? So those are like the top 4. I'm going to go with Vigil. If I had to make a top guess, it would probably be the guy who disappeared. He might turn up as a victim in the 5th trial. That's just another role he could be. So, it's just that this one's too hard because it's too early, right? He's too early, no evidence against him really, and just too weird. So, that makes it such that if the top 4, it kind of makes it so he's kind of the only one left without this big reason not for it to be him, right? But he makes so much more sense as a victim. I don't know. Yeah, there's another thing that's weird about him too. But yeah, if I have to make a guess, it's gonna have to be Vigil, I guess. Just throwing something out there. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. We are here to conduct a fair or just trial of the defendant, Barak Van Zykes. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready to begin? The defense is ready, my lord. Rinosuke answered first. That's a twist. The prosecution is more than ready. Oh, Kazuma-sama. Prepare for deer roasted. I've been wishing to see you in court again for so long, it feels. But I never pictured it happening like this. Never thought I'd be facing you behind the prosecution's bench. The so-called Reaper of the Bailey has been a scourge like no other, undermining Her Majesty's justice system. Today we must uncover the truth behind this scourge. In other words, this trial is going to be a lot more far-reaching than Inspector Gregson's murder. The truths revealed by these proceedings may have an unpredictable repercussions across the judiciary. Accordingly, they are to be conducted as a closed trial with no members of the public present, by Her Majesty's direct orders. That brings up another topic. So there's like these shadowy, overarching characters that are mentioned like occasionally in passing and are big deals, but they're like never brought down to the player's level. Like, for example, the seminar director would be kind of an example of this kind of character. One is the Attorney General. Male Strongheart wants to be the Attorney General, but he's not, and so supposedly there is a sitting Attorney General he wishes to overtake right now. And that person is the highest ranking law enforcement officer. So he's like really, really big boss, but he just never comes down to like Rinosuke's level, so you don't interact with him, but he's like there and gets mentioned. The other one is even more subtle. You tend to pass over it and think of it kind of like a British stereotype thing. But it's the Queen. I presume it's Queen Victoria in this case. Like, where does like, is she gonna have some role in here? Like, she's this big shadowy overarching figure. Anyway. How will that work, my lord? I'll go back to that screen because I noticed something. The burden of all arbitration adjudication falls on my shoulders. Just like usual in Ace Attorney, we're back to the normal way. Therefore, as you will see, the juror's bench shall remain vacant today. But like, who are these people? See these like figures in here? Like, they didn't rework this background. If no members of the public are present, might I ask who is currently occupying the gallery, my lord? And then I read the text. And now I feel stupid. They are members of the judiciary, here to witness proceedings and ensure an equitable trial. The members of the judiciary? Oh my, this is a very unusual trial already. There is, of course, another unprecedented aspect to these proceedings on which I must elaborate. How does this not have a precedent? There's a precedent in the meta. Yeah, the counsels of the prosecution and the defense are both aliens of Great Britain. I believe it takes an outsider to see the truth sometimes. And as I stand here in this courtroom now, I am quite certain this is the reason why I had to come to Britain. Not quite right. Unless he's literally that shallow, like he's not figured it all out, and he's just trying to take revenge on Van Zykes, and that's all. That seems kind of beneath Kazuma. Very well, let us commence proceedings. Prosecutor Asogi, your opening statement, if you please. Certainly, my lord. The incident took place on the 1st of November, at just after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The location was a building of flats on Fresno Street on the outskirts of the city. The victim's body was discovered there in an old single-room rental property. Yes, Inspector Tobias Gregson. I name know very well indeed to this court. Not least for his miraculous resolution of one of this country's grimmest crimes 10 years ago. The Professor case. How sure are you about the time of the incident? Wait, is Inspector Lestrade actually Gina's dad and not Gina? Well, anyway. Several witnesses on the street... I just like trying to relate this to the Hound of the Baskervilles. Several witnesses on the street outside heard the gunshot, like the real book in real life. And all have reported the same time. Yes, that's what Gina told us too. There were a number of witnesses. I have here a plan of the room. The victim was found curled up in one corner. It's believed that he was shot from the front at point-blank range and died instantly. How has the range been determined? There were scorch marks around the entry wound. Such marks are caused by the gunpowder used to fire the bullet. But powder hot enough to leave scorch marks is only ejected a few inches beyond the end of the barrel. In other words, it only happened when the target is at point-blank range. I see, yes. Thank you for the detailed explanation, counsel. The murder weapon was found lying beside the victim. Okay, let's get that autopsy report. We gotta examine it. Gregson, male, age 45, British, time of death. Not listed. Coroner Mariah Gorey. Nice one. Why is the time of death not listed? Victim was shot in the chest at close range from the front, resulting in instant death. But if they know at the time he was shot, and they know the death was instant, why is the time of death not listed? Scorch marks at point of entry, the bullet exited the body from behind. Additional observations, the caliber of the gun used matches that of a standard issue firearms of members of the judiciary. Cool. The murder weapon was found lying beside the victim. And have you managed to ascertain the owner of this firearm? No, my lord. We don't do fingerprints. Not conclusively. However, you would think you could do fingerprints. I don't know why you can't. Or maybe, Dr. Scythe took that information with her when she left. Bravo, Kasuma-sama, for not trying to use the gun as evidence when its provenance can't be proven. Furthermore, my lord, as I've explained, the revolver was fired at extremely close range. The bullet passed through the victim and struck the wall behind him. There is a candelabrum mounted on that wall, and the tip of one of the candles in it was found to have been blown off by the projectile. Yeah, but we didn't find a bullet hole in the wall, did we? We noticed that too, didn't we? Yes, that's right. Thank you for the thorough report, counsel. The setting of the crime is clear to me. You will submit the plan of the crime scene as evidence, please. As you wish, my lord. Is this Fresno Street room Inspector Gregson's private abode? I don't examine this because I gotta add to the court record. No, just a magnifying glass. Cool. Nothing to do there. Just gotta make sure everything's like, all the examines are checked off. So you end up with that trap where you present something but it won't register because you didn't examine something in it. No, my lord. The room is rented by Mr. Hugh Bone. But there's a precious little furniture inside and it is generally in a poor state of repair. So what on earth was Gregson even doing there? Presumably, he was investigating some case or other. When a policeman was informed of the gunshot from the witnesses and rushed to the scene, he found only the deceased inspector and the accused standing alongside, holding the revolver. The attending officer arrested the accused on the spot. So, the details of the case are clear. In that case, the prosecution would like to call its first witness. A name, please, counsel? Naturally, the accused himself, Lord Van Sykes. As a prosecutor, he believes in the oath of office he's taken, and will be compelled to tell the truth. Very well, let the defendant take the witness stand. Somebody's going to lie, isn't he? They all lie, otherwise they wouldn't be on the stand. So witness, state your name and occupation for the court. Barak Van Sykes, Old Bailey prosecutor. I presume, Lord Van Sykes, that you heard Prosecutor Asogi's opening precis. I did. It is alleged that you were found at the scene of the crime, and that you were arrested by the arriving police officer. Can you confirm this? Yes, my lord. Then I'm sure the court would like to hear you explain some things away, namely why you were there in the room on Fresno Street at the time in question, and what exactly took place. I intend to explain away nothing. I simply tell the truth. I must say, Lord Van Sykes, I never imagined this day would come. Or rather, I didn't want to imagine it would come. But since you became known as the Reaper, a part of me has been dreading it. Your formal testimony then, witness. And this is where I mess everything up. It's always the first one. The facts of the incident. I was investigating Gregson, and my inquiries led me to that address. When I first entered the room that day, it was dark inside, and I saw no one. A moment later, I heard the gunshot. I spun around and saw the revolver on the floor. Just as I picked the firearm up to examine it, the door flew open and I heard a man scream. It was only then that the body of Inspector Gregson appeared before me. That is weird. That testimony was the whole truth? It was. We're gonna show it wasn't in a minute. So, you heard a shot being fired in a room with no living occupants. And moments later, a corpse somehow appeared before your eyes. Is that it? I threw all the gold in this furnace, and this calf came out. You're right, you haven't explained away anything. In fact, that would barely qualify as an excuse. I thought you were my mute apprentice. Yet it turns out you have a way with words, Prosecutor Asogi. It would appear to be a singular tale indeed. This means a tale is not invertible. Singular isn't the word, it's laughable. Once got into Kazuma, he's not behaving like himself at all. Very well then. Counsel, you may begin your cross-examination. Yes, my lord. Which I have surprisingly not interjected at all since the start of this. Besides saying I'm ready.
Hold it!
You were investigating the inspector? What on earth for? I am not at liberty to say. Sorry? I identified a distinct possibility that Gregson was involved in the case I was investigating. Regrettably, though, he was killed before I could secure the proof I needed. Is the court to understand then that on the day in question you followed the victim to the scene? No. I was privy to his movements in advance. How? I stole into his office in the yard and consulted his diary. The address on Fresno Street was noted in the 5 p.m. entry. You illegally entered the man's office. In Japan, that alone would constitute a very serious offense. As it does in Great Britain, I assure you. Is that not the case, Lord Van Zykes? I was aware of the possible consequences. So, in summary, you were investigating the victim. And yet, you refused to tell the court why. I didn't realize British prosecutors enjoyed such freedom to choose what to divulge under oath. Why did I ever think I could defend this man?
Hold it!
Had you ever been to the address before? No, never. I only learned of the place as a result of my investigation into Gregson's activities. There was no light inside when I entered, so it was all but impossible to make out anything. But at 5 p.m. the sun would only have just gone down. It would still have been reasonably light outside. The room has a window, but it was boarded shut. Very little light found its way into the room from outside, so it was extremely murky inside. I wouldn't have noticed if the victim was already lying on the floor. There is no artificial light in the room, you say. You're quite sure? I am quite sure that the part of the room where the body was found was very dark. The candles. I have a feeling there was a small oil lamp burning on the desk, though. I couldn't say for certain. Look, Mr. Naruhodo. There is a small desk in the room just there. Yes, I remember, and there was an oil lamp on it, as well as the framed photograph. When I entered the room, I closed the door behind me and started towards the desk to investigate. And what did you find? Nothing. I never actually reached the desk. A moment later, I heard the gunshot. I spun around and saw the revolver on the floor.
Hold it!
So, who fired the gun? I have no idea. I did not see anybody else in the room. But you saw it was very dark in there. Yes, that's right. All I can tell you is I didn't sense another presence. How then could it be that the gunshot actually originated from somewhere outside the room? Kazuma's gonna respond with, it was point blank range. No, that's out of the question. Oh. Without doubt, the sound emanated from inside the room. I could smell the gunpowder. This is going from bad to worse. And you say that's the point at which you noticed the revolver on the floor. Correct. And I foolishly picked it up. That was careless on my part. You pulled the Rinosuke. Presumably, then, the gunshot you heard came from the firearm that you somewhat hastily took in your hands. In point of fact, my lord, I believe it did not. What? The barrel of the revolver I picked up was cold, and there was no smell of spent powder. But then, where on earth is the gun that was fired? Whilst I would like to oblige you with an answer, I am afraid I can't. I too would dearly like to know that. Ugh.
Hold it!
A man, you say? One of the witnesses, I presume? That's right. One of the street merchants working on Fresno Street. Who are these merchants? A number of them set up their stalls directly beneath the boarded window of the crime scene. A match seller, a newsmonger, and a peddler. They're all given statements saying they've heard the gunshot. And without thought of a danger, they ran inside to see what had happened. Yes, Gina told us about that yesterday, didn't she? They burst through the door with some force, it would seem. They did. And almost gave me a heart attack in the process. But you're supposed to be the Reaper. The first man to come in immediately noticed the revolver in my hand and fled. A policeman patrolling on Fresno Street heard the commotion and was able to arrest the accused shortly after the incident occurred. Anyway, the man's scream drew my attention in that direction.
Hold it!
What do you mean by that? In what way did the body appear? I honestly can't explain it, but it's the truth. As far as I was concerned, the body hadn't been there until that point, and then suddenly, there it was. Did you perhaps hear the sound of the victim falling to the ground just beforehand? At that moment, what I heard was the sound of the door flying open and the scream of the man who came inside first, nothing more. I see. After the man fled, I examined the body. I was stunned to find that it was Gregson. Most curious circumstances indeed. How the inspector was killed, or how his body seemed to appear out of nowhere, I have no idea.
Objection!
Surely the court has heard enough. My lord, their cross-examination has clearly revealed that the accused, Barak von Zykes, is lying on multiple fronts. What is that supposed to mean? Good gracious, counsel. The defendant is lying, you say? Oh, it fears the plot advances if you don't present. Okay, let's go then. In his testimony just now, this is like writing your 10th symphony before your 9th so you don't die after writing the 9th. We skip over the first present so that I don't mess up on it. He claims that he failed to notice the victim's body because the room was dark. That's correct. No, that's impossible. As proven by this candelabrum. How does that prove anything? If you examine the tip of the long candle, you can see it's been blown off by a powerful impact. Well, I would assume that the projectile from the firearm passed through the victim and struck the candle. The problem comes when you consider the other two candles, which are clearly a different length. Yes, I can see that only the candle that appears to have been struck by the bullet is long. You could reasonably expect someone to have lit all three candles together. Which begs the question of why only one has ended up longer than the others. That must be because that particular candle was extinguished when the others were still burning. Ah. That's right. When the candle was hit by the bullet, it obviously went out. But the other two candles would still have been burning. So the fact is, the victim's body would have been illuminated by the light still thrown by the candelabrum. And the accused's claim that he couldn't see the body clearly contradicts those facts. And now to the next lie. There's more. The accused also claims never to have visited the scene of the crime before. That's the truth. In that almost empty room, the police discovered something very unusual. A board covered from top to bottom with police documents and newspaper cuttings. Yes, that's right. We saw it too. It goes without saying that the contents of the police documents cannot be divulged. However, they include a number of reports from various historical cases, the oldest of which was from 10 years ago. 10 years ago? This is starting to sound familiar. And there is a common thread linking all of the documents on that board. Indeed. What is this common thread, counsel? They all relate to cases prosecuted in court by Barak van Zykes. All of them? And furthermore, all of those cases are ones in which the defendant was acquitted. Good lord. Interestingly, none of those defendants are alive today, because all of them have been sent to their graves by the Reaper. We've shown how some of them have been, and it wasn't the Reaper. Eggs Benedict killed McGilded. Dr. Size killed Odious Man, right? Oh no. In short, that dingy little room is the Reaper's secret hideout and his base of operations. I can argue on this, Kazuma. It's Gregson investigating the Reaper, is what it would be, not the Reaper. The Reaper's hideout. And yet the Reaper would claim never to have been to his own secret hideout. No one would believe that. No, the truth is we've been looking at this backwards. Backwards? Explain, counsel. Inspector Gregson was investigating the identity of the Reaper. When he discovered the location of the man's secret hideout, he was killed. As I'm sure everyone can imagine, by the Reaper's hand. What? Ora! Very well, I hereby state the current opinion of the court. Brock Van Sykes is an outstanding prosecutor who has rendered great service to his country. However, it is with deep regret that I must concur with Prosecutor Zasogi's contention that the defendant's testimony exhibits a number of stark inconsistencies with the known facts. All I have done is state the truth as I know it. Kazuma has done a brilliant job as ever. It's kind of like an Edgeworth job, finally. He's drawing on his experience as a defense attorney to build his prosecution case, and it's formidable. Counsel, will you submit the board that you just showed the court what you just showed the court as evidence? I believe it is fundamental in establishing the facts surrounding the Reaper's existence. Thank you, Mr. My Lord. And now, the prosecution would like to call new witnesses to the stand. There are details of a whole raft of cases dating back years on here, aren't there? This paper from 10 years ago is browning with age, look. Out of interest, the most recent thing appears to be this newspaper cutting here. Why do you keep the old cases still on there, though? Like, if he was doing them one at a time, right? I mean, if Gregson was investigating the Reaper, he would be investigating all at once, so he'd have all of them still on there. Van Zyke wouldn't have them all still on there. He'd only have, like, the most recent one. Oh, it's the same Red-Headed League advertisement that Mr. Sholmes had picked out. And do you remember there was a red hairpiece at the scene, too? Was Inspector Gregson an exponent of the Red-Headed League, then? Oh, what's this? Mr. Naruhodo, look. Oh yes, it's a smudge of some kind. In fact, it looks just like a handprint. And the color, it's blood, isn't it? Oh dear, how disturbing. Witnesses saw events unfold on the day in question. They were mentioned in the previous testimony too, if you remember. Yes, the street sellers who heard the gunshot and went running into the room. Very well, lead the witnesses in. The defendant may step down from the witness stand. Certainly, my lord. So we have Beppo. So, witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court. Beppo has a history of not telling the truth. Names? We don't use names. Far too fancy for the likes of us. We're just free and easy. Sell what we like, live where we want to live. Give them all a vacant share as they walk down Fresno, and spin a few words into a verse for them. Ah. May I be right in assuming that all three of you make your living by selling wares on the street? Hey, everyone calls me Gossip. I sell jaunty little tidbits to passers-by, you know. Jaunty little tidbits? Got an absolute smasher for you, sir. Right up your guinness, sir. 6 pence is the price, and not a penny less. Wait, you're actually trying to sell it to me now? Oh, come on, sir. Don't tell me you're not interested. Try the man. Give him the money and see what it is. Pay the man, counsel. Alright, alright. 6 pence it is. You won't regret it, sir. Now get your listening ears on. Just between us, a young couple on Slate Street have just had twins. Is that it? No, that's not it. It's gossip, isn't it? It wants to spread. Just that bit's up to you and your mouth, of course. I've got more, you know. Want another juicy one? 6 pence a piece it is, if you're curious. I am curious, yes. About what's going on just under that fat bottom lip of yours. Namely that unusual bruise, or whatever it is that's poking out from under your collar. What about the next witness, then? What name do you go by and what do you sell? Hi, I'm Venus. That's what everyone calls me. Funny, innit? I sell these lovely little fireworks to all the local school kids. That seems irrelevant. That's some interesting comedy. 6 pence a pop. What do you say? You weren't exaggerating with little. Do they actually sell? Oh yeah. The second years can't get enough of my Venus firecrackers. Especially when I tell them that if they got 100, they could blow up the school. Except that wouldn't work. Not the most savior of ideas, young lady. What do you say then, eh? Want to part with 6 pence for a pop? Wait, what? You want me to buy one? Tell you what, I'll let you in on one little secret. If you get 100 of them, you could blow up the whole courtroom. Try the woman. Give her the money and see if she's right. Pay the woman, counsel. Alright. I'll buy one. Lovely stuff, right then? This is something a bit extra, just for you. The Venus special, only 600 pence. 600? It's 100 for my regular fireworks. Nothing little about that, is there? And there'd be nothing little about the punishment if I blew up the Old Bailey, either. There's only one slot left here. It just makes a new page, but anyway. Oh, not much to examine here. These are bullets. Huh, okay. And last witness, what name do you go by and what do you sell? I am thinker me. Think all sorts of thoughts. I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I think. Because I stand there on the street, watching the world go on about me, they call me the observator. Get out of it, old man. Everyone calls you Sandwich, and you know it. So, you don't actually sell anything. A problem shared is a problem halved, as they say. I give advice, I do, and think what it means. I don't actually sell anything, no. Come to think of it. Pity. No more purchases today, please. Well, we have quite a cast here, it seems. They conduct their business on Fresno Street from morning until night, my lord. And always at the same place, directly and adjacent to the crime scene. I see, and thus they heard the gunshot, I suppose. Not only that, but they very bravely ran inside to see what was going on and witnessed the crime. Well, I'll be begarred, I thought, just because us. Venus de Milo, what am I to do? What a terrible thing I saw. What I think is, if all what we see is light and shadow, Playing with our eyes. Is any of it real? Very well. The court will hear the formal testimony of these three witnesses now. You will describe in detail what you witnesses, what you witnessed and heard at the time of the incident. We saw the whole thing from start to finish, we did. Everything from the moment they went in the building. It was less than a minute after the Reaper had gone inside and we all heard a big bang. Seems to me that quick to talk is quick to walk, and Gossip couldn't wait to go and see what had happened. I ran to the room and there he was, the Reaper, gun in hand, standing over the dead body. I was scared after death me, so I ran off to find a copper. If these witnesses were there the whole day and saw everything, who did they see going inside the building? Only the victim, Inspector Gregson, and the accused, Brock Van Zykes. I've seen pictures of that Reaper in the paper. I know what he looks like. And just between us, folk love stories like this. I made myself a tidy sum already. But wait, the room was just one of several flats in the building. Someone from another flat could have done it. All those flats on Fresno Street are unoccupied. Of course they are. They're small, damp, dirty, and inexpensive to boot. The room in which the inspector was found in is the only property on the building that's currently leased. Now we know the leaseholder's name, don't we? It's Hugh Boone. The testimony of the court has just heard would appear to leave little room for doubt. It's becoming increasingly difficult to see how anyone other than the defendant could have committed the crime. No. Thank you for your candor, my lord. Counsel for the defense, you may proceed to cross-examine the witnesses. Yes, my lord. In a closed court like this without a jury, the judge is the only person whose opinion matters. I have to break down this testimony, somehow.
Hold it!
When you say they, who do you mean exactly? Inspector Gregson and the defendant, Lord Van Zykes? I suppose so. The likes of us don't know the names of the high and mighty. But I'll tell you one thing, it was the old Reaper that went in last. That's for sure and certain. Just behind Inspector Gregson. Did they arrive at the same time as each other? No, not at all. The first fellow must have gone inside a good 15 minutes before we heard that gunshot. The victim arrived 15 minutes before? Are you sure about that? Am I sure? Does it seem likely that I've forgotten a fellow with bright red hair like that, does it? Yeah, its hair really were red, weren't it? Redder than my flaming fireworks, even. That the fiery red mop still burnt in the inside of my eyelids, it is. Wait a minute. You're saying the man was a redhead? Weren't you listening, chum? He was a redhead, and he had a big trunk with him as well. But Inspector Gregson's hair isn't red. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It seems likely that the person you saw wasn't in fact Inspector Gregson at all, but some other third party. No, I hate to break it to you, but the witnesses are correct. What? Just have a look at this photograph of the victim taken at the scene. Why did they take the wig with them? Yes, that's Inspector Gregson, alright. And a red hair piece. Ah, of course, we saw one on the floor when we investigated the scene, didn't we? Still refuse to believe Inspector Gregson wore a hairpiece, though. So then why on earth would he have been wearing something like that? The color does seem to suit the man, one might say. The photograph will be submitted as evidence, please, counsel. Doesn't even match his beard, though, or his sideburns. Now, what became of the trunk that the red-headed victim was supposedly carrying? Okay, has that anything to do with the photograph? Just a magnifying glass. Okay, we can see blood that for some reason wasn't there. A red hairpiece. What became of the trunk that the red-headed victim was supposedly carrying? I was informed that no trunk was found at the scene. So it just disappeared? What, do you expect us to have been watching the building every second, do you? We definitely saw him in the dock going in, though. No question about that. It was less than a minute after the Reaper had gone inside that we heard a big bang.
Hold it!
By which presumably you mean the gunshot. I sell these little things, don't I? How would I know what a gunshot sounds like? But I've always thought perhaps something sounds a bit like this, doesn't it? And you say you heard the noise almost as soon as you saw the defendant here enter the building. That's right, it was almost straight away. Bang, it went. Just like that. He is the Reaper, isn't he? It's what the French call a fait accompli. When the Reaper's around, people are going in the ground. I mean, that's what he does, isn't it? I think we get the message. The Reaper couldn't allow the Inspector to live after he discovered his secret hideout. There can be no clearer motive for the crime. Yes. It certainly is eminently credible motive. Great. And at that point, you ran inside. Is that correct?
Hold it!
So, when Gossip ran to see what happened, did you go too? Well, I'm a bit hampered, see. All the signs are that I can't move very well. You're way behind, I presume, presumably, with that sandwich board around your neck and that big sign in your hand. What a great burden you bear. Pardon me for asking, Mr. Sandwich, but is it possible that you and I have met before? I'm not anybody, me. The signs are what make me who I am now. I sign, therefore I am. So, you weren't employed as an omnibus driver just under a year ago, then? I might be mistaken, but I believe his trembling has intensified, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, I agree. He's clearly been through a lot. Turn down King Henry Street, and the Black Widower's arms are just there. Oh dear, you've made him hide behind his sign. Life is full of surprises.
Hold it!
So, when you were the first person to arrive on the scene, is that right? That I was. Kicked the door open like a professional I did, and yelled out, "What's going off here?" As I explained, all he heard was a man's scream, though. And it was dark inside the room. No, not dark at all. There was candles burning on the wall. Really? And there was a fellow collapsed on the floor. Just between us is the first thing I noticed when I got inside. I see. Even though Lord Van Zykes claims not to have seen any such lights on the wall. The next thing I noticed was someone standing right beside the body. The accused, Barak Van Zykes. That's right, the pale-faced Reaper himself. I was a little shocked, I won't deny it, but I'm lily-livered coward. I stood my ground and gave the Reaper a cold, hard stare myself.
Excuse me!
Do you have something to add, Mr. Sandwich? There's really nothing to me. Empty in the head I am. Just two slices with no middle. So I don't know what you would want with me. I think that maybe you just remembered something. Having heard Mr. Gossip's last sentence, I mean. Statement, I mean. What I think is, we're all nothings, really. We try to dress ourselves up as something else, but at the end of the day, we're all just street sellers. That's enough for you, Sandwich. Keep your trap shut now. Unless you want us to make you into a real sandwich. When he saw the Reaper, he fell clean over on his backside. That's it. Oh, you rotten beggar. I told you to keep that a secret. He screamed, he did. Screamed and scrambled off on all fours. That's all I wanted to say. Mr. Gossip, is that true? The floor was dead slippery, that's why. Planted my hand in a filthy pool of blood, didn't I? Yuck. What? A pool of blood? Now listen here, even when I was sprawling on the floor, I still kept giving the Reaper a cold hard stare, and don't you forget it. Let's go back a little. Did you say you got blood on your hand? I did, Happens to the best of us at times, doesn't it? So I was scared, so I slipped over. We can keep it just between us, can't we? No, Mr. Gossip. I'm going to have to ask you to add that information to your formal testimony. Oh, if I must. The witnesses will amend his testimony to include the aforementioned details at once. Man, these presses are deep. I have to press him on this statement.
Hold it!
You wiped your hand on the floor. Well, who wants blood on his hand, eh? Horrible stuff. And they might have thought I'd done it. No, ta. And you didn't think that might be a problem? Does it really matter if I left a few grubby handprints on the floor? They'll get cleaned up in the end, won't they? Don't make such a fuss, that's the message from all of us. Is something wrong, Counsel? No, my lord. I didn't remember anything in the report about a bloody handprint on the floor, that's all. Don't come at me with all that. You can't intimidate me. I know what I did. I wiped it off on the floor, the blood. Hopefully this is an easy one. Mr. Naruhodo, I don't have all the answers yet, but I think we may have just uncovered a vital clue.
Hold it!
So you didn't run into the room with your friends? I'm not that sort of girl. Sorry. I'm a timid little thing, me. I was too scared to go in there. Alright. I see. Old Lippy and the witch ran in there, and then I heard a sort of old lady scream. Well, that wasn't me, I swear. If I were a gentleman, I'd state my honor on it. I wondered what on earth was going on. Which is when you went to find a policeman. And I ran into a copper as soon as I turned the corner. So I brought him straight back to the place. Didn't I do well, eh? Just between us, that copper's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw the Reaper. I've never felt more uncomfortable in all my life. And the defendant was arrested on the spot, I believe. Considering the catalog of killings the Reaper had carried out, it was a particularly inauspicious end. If I can't find any holes in this testimony, I'm afraid the judge will give a ruling of guilty, Mr. Naruhodo. Truth is, though, their combined testimony is fairly damning. Unfortunately, there don't seem to be any obvious problems with their statements, do there? Still, if Lord Van Zykes really is innocent, then I'm almost certain that we'll find something in there that doesn't quite add up. You don't think that one of these three could be the true culprit, do you? No, I don't. I don't know, but what I do know is that there's more to this case than is yet to be brought to light. It's definitely not one of those three. They're too lame. Okay. He didn't wipe it on the floor. He kind of didn't wipe it, sort of like he planted it on the back side of the board. Which is kind of like, I don't know why that matters. but we're gonna present it just because it's a contradiction.
Objection!
I made it through the first present without messing up royally. Success. So you wiped off the blood from your hand on the floor of the room. Are you quite sure about that? Well, what else do you expect me to have done, eh? Does it really matter?
Objection!
The police found no such handprint on the floor during their investigations. What exactly is the defense asserting? If you listen, you'll find out, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly there was no bloody handprint found on the floor. What are you trying to say? Whoops. There was a handprint of blood left very clearly on the scene, on the back of this notice board. Yes, indeed. Indisputably a handprint in the distinctive color of blood. You're dead right. That's my right hand. I know it anywhere.
Objection!
Witness very clearly testified that he wiped his hand on the floor. Why do I keep opening that? I don't know. One of my fingers is sinking into the key. Any handprints on the back of the board are irrelevant. Not if the board itself had fallen over onto the floor. In that case, it's quite possible for the witness's handprint to have ended up there. Just look at the floor plan of the room. The notice board was in the opposite corner of the room to the victim, and it was in an upright position. Even if it had somehow been toppled and was lying on the floor at the time, it would have been a considerable distance from the body. I fell over when I came across the body, so I was basically right next to the corpse, not on the other side of the room. In other words, the defense's assertion is contradictory. Yes, it is. There's a very definite contradiction here, for which there must be a reason. I take it that you formulated a proper hypothesis, counsel, regarding this apparent discrepancy between the witness's account and the handprint found on the scene? I have, my lord. The discrepancy between the witness's account and the location of the handprint is explained by another handprint. We didn't find another handprint, did we? The board moving. False testimony. Let's go look at this picture. I don't see a handprint in the picture. Alright, so there's only one handprint as far as I know. The board moving. Isn't really evidence though. I would go false testimony personally. Witnesses claim to have wiped his bloody hand on the floor, yet no sign of that remains at the scene. Simple explanation is that the witness is lying.
Objection!
Just because it's the simplest explanation doesn't make it the correct one. Rinosuke Naruhodo. Positing perjury simply because it suits you. You bring shame on your Japanese heritage. Well, I was wrong. I made it through the first one, I did make it through the second one. I ask you not to oversimplify matters again, counsel. I don't remember fostering that kind of simplistic thinking in you. Since when were you my father? Anyway, as I always taught to consider all possibilities, then show me. There should be a bloody handprint on the floor. So where did it go? I'm ready to give the proper explanation to the court now, my lord. I take it that you formulated a proper hypothesis. Okay. There is no other handprint, so it has to be the board moving. The real contradiction here is the handprint itself, not where it was found. As the court can see, it's upside down. Good gracious, so it is. If the witness had put his hand against the board, the finger should be pointing upwards. Well, I mean... it was lying down. That should be enough, right? What does that tell us? It tells us one simple fact. When this handprint was made, the board must have been lying on the floor as I previously suggested, which means that after the incident, it must have been moved. What?
Objection!
They're claiming that somebody moved the notice board after the shooting. And tell the court who. I don't know that yet, but the point is, when you consider all the testimony we've heard so far, we can now be very clear on one point. And that would be the position of the notice board at the time of the incident, my lord. So, counsel, I must ask you for clarity on your assertion for the court. At the time of the incident, where do you maintain the notice board was situated? It was right here. Because this would explain how when the gun was fired, Gregson's body suddenly appeared in the room. The notice board fell over, revealing the body behind it.
Take that!
This is the only possible location. Immediately adjacent to the doorway. If the court would think back to the testimony given by the defendant earlier, he said that when he entered the room, it was dark. He couldn't see the body. Beck, if the notice board had been here, the body would have been completely hidden from view. Oh. And the light from the candles would have been blocked, making the room appear darker.
Objection!
But the accused also claimed that the victim's body simply appeared before him. That's true. Or, in his precise words, just as I picked the firearm up to examine it, the door flew open and I heard a man scream. It was only then that the body of Inspector Gregson appeared before me. I don't know about calling it a scream, but was talking about me and no mistake. Because it was me that kicked the door open. If you look again at the floor plan, consider what would happen if the door of the room was thrown open with force. That can't... The door struck the notice board, knocking it over, and then making the victim's body visible. Good gracious. My client has told nothing but the truth. He has simply described what he saw. Or, counsel, how has this not come to light before now? After the incident, somebody must have righted the board and moved it into the position where the police, myself, and my colleagues saw it when investigating the room. Witness, what have you to say for yourself? What? Me, my lord. He just basically... His testimony wasn't really that bad, honestly. You and your fellows were there at the scene before anybody else. It goes without saying that you must know something about the position of the notice board. The witnesses in the stand will testify again. You will each explain exactly what you did upon arriving at the scene of the crime. Stop looking over your glasses at me. I get the message. Okay, let me check the time here. Okay, I gotta hang it up. So, I'll hang it up right here. Save, not because I'm low on health, but because I have to hang it up. And we'll return to this the next recording. I got really no new insight as to, like, who exactly did it. yet, but the case is seeming to come out much simpler than I previously imagined it to be. So that's something to note, I guess.